The hum of the Desmosedici at full lean isn't just sound, it's prophecy. Beneath the titanium shimmer of Ducati's perfection, fear vibrates like resonance through carbon fiber, invisible yet deafening. Every lap Marc Márquez rides on the GP25 is an act of both genius and temptation, a communion between man and machine, so precise it bends logic itself. His front brake pressure peaks at 11.2 bar, his throttle response measured in microseconds, each data point proof of a control bordering on myth. And yet, inside the glowing corridors of Borgo Panigale, victory smells faintly of dread. They've seen this movie before, the empire that crowned a god, only to die when he vanished. Honda learned that devotion can become dependency, and dependency can become disaster. Now Ducati stands at that same precipice, engines humming in triumph while the future tightens like a corner taken one gear too high. Marquez has turned their bike into legend, their brand into destiny. But what happens when destiny decides to leave? The engineers won't say it aloud, but the telemetry already whispers it. Remove Marquez, and the algorithm collapses. The bike that everyone can ride might soon become the bike only one man can understand. Losing him is not an option, says a voice behind closed doors, trembling under the weight of its own truth. The numbers say dominance, but the silence says danger. Because in MotoGP, brilliance is never eternal. It's borrowed, fragile, timed to the millisecond. And as 2027 approaches, Ducati's red empire trembles not from defeat, but from the unbearable thought that perfection itself might be their undoing. And as the echoes of that fear ripple through Borgo Panigale, the story begins where glory and danger collide, with Marquez's 2025 season, a masterpiece of domination so complete it made even perfection feel perilous. The 2025 season unfolded like an opera of speed, and Marc Márquez was its conductor, leading every crescendo with terrifying precision. Each weekend felt scripted by destiny. 11 Grand Prix victories, 14 sprint triumphs, and 541 points from a possible 629, an 86% efficiency rate that turned statistics into poetry. Under the red glow of Ducati's garage lights, engineers whispered that no telemetry could capture what he did mid-corner. His throttle modulation, measured at micro-intervals of 2 milliseconds, revealed a control that defied both data and imagination. "He doesn't ride the bike," murmured one mechanic. "The bike obeys him like a thought." Marquez's style was raw and mercurial, a balance between instinct and geometry. The Desmosedici GP25, with its newly calibrated front-end load ratio of 52.3%, seemed born for him. Or perhaps he was born for it. Still, deep inside his helmet, Marc sometimes heard the echo of his own question. What happens when perfection starts to scare even me? The Ducati paddock lived between triumph and tension, haunted by the ticking clock of a contract that ends in 2026. Each victory expanded the legend, but also the dread of 2027, a year whispered in boardrooms like a curse. The night he clinched the title in Motegi, Domenicali's voice trembled when he said, "He's rewritten what domination means." Crowds roared, yet within Ducati's corridors, silence carried a different weight, the fear of becoming prisoners of their own miracle. Technicians compared his braking data to satellite telemetry, finding deviations of only 0.003 seconds between entry and apex, a margin too precise to be human. The engineers called it M93 sync, half joking, half afraid. Marquez smiled, but the smile carried fatigue, the price of being both savior and storm. He felt the old ache in his arm, a phantom memory rather than pain. It reminded him of how fragile empires are when built on one man's body. In interviews, he spoke like a champion, yet his eyes betrayed a hint of distance, the look of someone already measuring time against destiny. Each lap was an act of faith and defiance, a rebellion against mortality disguised as performance. When the final race ended under Qatari lights, Ducati celebrated like conquerors, but Marc stood apart, helmet off, staring at the reflection of his machine. For a moment, it seemed that even victory couldn't silence the quiet terror behind his calm, that somewhere in the future, the same brilliance that built his legend might ignite the beginning of Ducati's undoing. And as the cameras flashed, one thought settled in him like a secret omen. Every masterpiece is also a warning. The countdown to 2027 feels like a slow-motion detonation, its echo already vibrating through the paddock corridors of Bologna. Engineers whisper of the 850 cubic centimeters engines as if they were prophecies written in aluminum, promising rebirth and ruin in equal measure. The new regulations will erase years of accumulated certainty, forcing every team to reinvent its own DNA. Inside Ducati, the words reset and rebuild sound less like technical terms and more like omens. Losing him is not an option, simply, it isn't, confides an executive under the veil of anonymity, his voice brittle with sleeplessness. Marquez, now both champion and chess piece, knows the board will be redrawn from scratch. In private, he wonders, what if the future is faster than my instincts? He has seen eras change before. Tire compounds, electronics, aerodynamics, but never a metamorphosis this radical. The reduction from 1,000 cubic centimeters to 850 cubic centimeters alters not just power but philosophy. Corner speed replaces brute force, aerodynamics surrender to balance, torque curves become poetry instead of violence. Ducati's wind tunnel data already hints at chaos, with downforce losses approaching 11% at full lean due to the smaller engine's airflow signature. Their engineers test prototypes at dawn, chasing stability that evaporates like breath on cold carbon fiber. In those dim hours, the fear is not losing races, but losing Marquez. He has become their compass, the one who translates vibration into understanding, telemetry into instinct. The boardroom monitors blink with simulations that predict performance drops of 0.48 seconds per lap, an eternity when titles hang by tenths. Marquez listens to these numbers with the calm of someone who has seen kingdoms fall. Regulations don't scare me, he says quietly. Stagnation does. His eyes flash with that old defiance, but behind them hides calculation, the same kind that made him leave Honda when the empire cracked. The Ducati bosses know this look. It's the gaze of a rider already measuring other horizons. They promise him everything: leadership, influence, technology molded to his fingertips. But machines, like men, resist ownership. As 2027 draws nearer, the air thickens with the static of change, and Ducati's greatest fear becomes painfully clear. They may dominate now, but in the new era's first heartbeat, control could slip away like traction on wet asphalt. In that moment, they will realize that progress, like speed itself, always comes at the cost of certainty. For years, Honda reigned like a metronome of perfection, each lap of Marquez's RC213V beating with the same ruthless rhythm that defined an era. 6 world titles in 7 years turned victory into routine, until a single crash shattered the illusion of invincibility. The 2020 Jerez accident did more than break a bone. It cracked the foundation of an empire that had forgotten how to evolve. When Marquez disappeared into surgery rooms and recovery wards, the RC213V revealed its secret. It was not a motorcycle, it was an extension of one man's anatomy. Engineers had built it around his unique steering angle input, which reached up to 63 degrees of lean before tire collapse, a number ordinary riders could not dream of touching. The strategic mistake of the Japanese has been following a single rider, admitted Gigi Dall'Igna later, his tone half admiration, half warning. Every bolt, every line of code in the electronics, carried Marquez's fingerprint like DNA in metal. Inside the paddock, whispers became confessions. Honda had lost its map when it lost its compass. Danny Pedrosa struggled. Pol Espargaro vanished. Joan Mir drowned in data he could not translate. Marquez, watching from home, muttered to himself, "I never asked them to build me a cage." The numbers told the story better than words. 3 seasons without a single win, a 41-year low, a mechanical silence louder than any crash. The RC213 versus once mighty torque curve turned against its riders, delivering brutal mid-corner snaps that punished hesitation. Honda's engineers tried to adapt, but their algorithms spoke an extinct dialect of speed. The more they tweaked, the more they broke what made it work. It was a tragedy written in telemetry, a symphony that lost its conductor. Marquez returned in 2023, but the bike greeted him like a ghost, familiar in shape, dead in spirit. "It's not my Honda anymore," he told a friend, his voice carrying the weight of exile. The fall of Honda became Ducati's obsession, their sleepless parable of how brilliance can turn to blindness. Inside Borgo Panigale, Dall'Igna's words became doctrine. Listen to every rider, or risk losing them all. The collapse of the dynasty was not sudden. It was slow, quiet, technical, a decay measured in milliseconds and arrogance. And in the mirror of that failure, Ducati sees its own reflection trembling, because every empire believes its walls are eternal until the first crack whispers otherwise. For 2 glorious seasons, Ducati's Desmosedici GP25 stood as the emblem of collective engineering, a motorcycle shaped not by ego but by consensus. Each bolt carried the fingerprints of Bagnaia, Martin, Bastianini, and Zarco, their data layered into a harmony that made the bike universal. The philosophy was simple. No single voice could own the red beast. Yet when Marquez arrived, that harmony began to tremble like glass under vibration. His telemetry eclipsed all others, his feedback rewriting the gospel of Borgo Panigale. Engineers who once debated in chorus now spoke in echoes, aligning every adjustment to the rhythm of his perfection. He rides in a dimension we can't model, confessed the technician, his voice halfway between awe and fear. In private, Marquez wondered how long before they stop hearing anyone else. The Desmosedici corner entry data revealed the shift. His braking G-force peaked at 1.7 G, 12% higher than Bagnaya's, a difference that distorted the baseline for development. That number, small in math but immense in meaning, began tilting the whole structure toward one man's physics. Ducati's engineers call it the gravitational effect, the way his performance bends every conversation around him. The democratic bike was becoming monarchical. Meetings that once ended in compromise now ended in silence, and in that silence, control slipped away unseen. "We built a bike for everyone," said an insider, "but now it listens only to one heartbeat." The brilliance of Marquez made every victory sublime, but every update more dangerous. If the Desmosedici evolved solely for him, it risks becoming unrideable for mortals, an echo of the very curse that destroyed Honda. Bagnaia feels it too, the ghost in the machine that no longer responds to his touch. The front talks a different language now, he admitted after a fall, his words trembling between confession and accusation. The paradox is cruel. The closer Ducati gets to perfection, the further it drifts from stability. Inside the factory, screens glow like stained glass, data scrolling like scripture, and the name Marquez glows brighter than all others. The bike that once symbolized democracy now kneels before a single throne, its power both divine and fragile. And somewhere between victory and vertigo, Ducati learns the oldest truth in racing, that when one star burns too bright, even the sun forgets how to shine. Ducati's triumph came gilded in gold, but beneath the brilliance, the cracks began to whisper. To secure Marquez, they sacrificed not only contracts but loyalty, the fragile architecture of trust built over seasons. Jorge Martin walked away from the Red Fortress with a bitterness that no victory could sweeten, muttering that Aprilia listened better than success ever did. Bastianini followed, his quiet departure disguised as a strategic move but heavy with resignation. Marco Bezzecchi, the eternal optimist, smiled for the cameras and signed elsewhere, though everyone could read the sadness in his posture. The paddock felt the tremor of disillusion, a collective exhale that smelled of burnt rubber and betrayal. Ducati, by signing Marquez, dismantled a project that had been in the making for a long time, warned Carlo Pernat, his gravelly voice cutting through the noise like a prophecy. He paused, then added, "It was the right decision, because the winner is always right, but now I wonder what the price will be for the future." Inside the factory, that sentence became a ghost that haunted every corridor. Bagnaia, once the calm center of the red universe, now rides like a man chasing his own shadow. His telemetry shows inconsistency in throttle reapplication, 0.15 seconds slower than in 2023, a micro-delay that screams hesitation. What if the problem isn't the bike, but me? He asks himself in silence, his confidence thinning like tire tread on a long run. David Tardazzi's words echoed across Sepping. "We're going to try something to help Pecco get back to making love with his bike instead of fighting a war with it. But there is no algorithm for intimacy. Engineers can fix electronics, not emotions." The camaraderie that once filled Ducati's garage now feels replaced by reverence and restraint, as if everyone fears to touch perfection. Marquez, unknowingly or not, changed the gravity inside the team. His excellence draws respect and resentment in equal measure. Every mechanic, every strategist, every rider feels the invisible pull of his orbit. Victories continue, yet the joy has grown brittle, crystalline, too sharp to hold. The paddock watches Ducati and wonders whether brilliance can coexist with balance, or if genius always demands a blood offering. In the end, the cost of signing Marquez may not be counted in money or titles, but of the quiet erosion of everything that made Ducati human. The calendar ticks toward 2027, with the rhythm of a countdown more dramatic than any race start, and every garage smells of tension and ink from contracts not yet signed. The new rulebook hovers like a storm cloud, shrinking engines to 850 cubic centimeters and resetting balance sheets, egos, and empires alike. In this chaos, the rider market becomes a theater of whispered promises and silent betrayals. Marquez, Bagnaia, Quartararo, and Acosta, four planets whose orbits will soon shift. turn the paddock into a gravitational battlefield of ambition. Marquez is fundamental to the future of the brand, declares Claudio Domenicali, though his tone carries the tremor of a man aware that futures are slippery things. Behind closed doors, agents circulate figures so obscene they sound like mythology. 10 million a season, 2-year guarantees, full factory autonomy. Marquez listens, nodding politely, but his eyes reveal the quiet arithmetic of legacy. What good is money if the bike stops speaking my language? He wonders, recalling how easily dominance can rot into dependence. Aprilia tempts him with creative freedom, KTM with raw innovation, Yamaha with the nostalgia of rebuilding a legend. Ducati counters with data, wind tunnel figures showing a projected aerodynamic gain of 2.6% under the 850 cubic centimeters airflow model, proof they are already one step ahead. Yet every offer feels like a test of faith, every conversation a negotiation with destiny. The market isn't about contracts, it's about who owns tomorrow's narrative. For Marquez, the noise around him blurs into one long overture of promises. I've learned not to sign dreams, he tells a journalist softly, only realities. Each word lands like a gear shift, precise and deliberate. The paddock, once a brotherhood of racers, has become a boardroom of kings disguised in leathers. Ducati fears that losing him would puncture not just performance but identity. Their red empire would bleed relevance overnight. Meanwhile, young Acosta circles the throne, a reminder that history never waits for anyone. The scene feels Shakespearean, alliances born over espresso, empires plotted in the shadows of motorhomes. And as the engines idle in the garages, everyone knows that when the pen finally meets paper, it will sound louder than any starting gun. Because in MotoGP's future market, signatures, not lap times, decide who still gets to dream. At 32, Marc Márquez moves through the paddock with the calm gravity of a man who has seen kingdoms rise and fall and learned that patience is its own weapon. His body, once a battlefield of scars and surgeries, now feels like tempered steel, flexible, strong, unyielding. Every muscle remembers the geometry of victory, every scar a coordinate on the map of resilience. He no longer chases contracts, he studies dynasties. I want to keep racing until I'm 40 if I can, he says, not as a boast but as a challenge to time itself. His telemetry still astonishes engineers, reaction speeds averaging 118 milliseconds, faster than the Desmosedici clutch response. They call it biomechanical telemetry, the way his instincts anticipate what data cannot predict. I've become my own algorithm, he thinks quietly, half amused, half aware of the burden that brings. Factories circle him like satellites, their offers wrapped in flattery and fear. Aprilia offers freedom, KTM innovation, Yamaha redemption, but Marquez listens for something purer, the sound of a bike that still wants to fight. Ducati knows this, and it terrifies them. They have built an empire on his momentum, yet his smile reminds them that empires are rented, not owned. He's the only rider who negotiates with silence, mutters a Ducati insider, watching him walk through the garage with unhurried confidence. The engineers study his data more than his words, decoding the man through numbers. In meetings, he speaks softly, but his pauses decide millions. Marquez understands leverage better than anyone. It's not about money, it's about the illusion that he could leave. The power he holds is not explosive, it's gravitational. He bends the entire sport toward his choices, and the paddock orbits accordingly. As 2027 draws near, time itself seems to wait for him to blink first. Because when Marc Márquez finally chooses where to race, MotoGP will not simply continue, it will realign. At 3 in the morning, the Ducati factory hums like a restless mind. Its machines asleep, but its engineers awake, haunted by echoes from Japan. They remember the story too well, Honda's empire built around a single man. Its brilliance turned to dust the moment Marquez fell. Now history crouches at their door, whispering its cruel symmetry. Ducati reigns supreme, yes, but their crown trembles on borrowed time. Every data screen flickers with a question that no algorithm can answer. What happens if he walks away? The ghost of Honda lingers in the carbon dust, a reminder that domination is not the same as security. Something will happen there, Carlo Pernat warned, his tone more eulogy than prediction. He has seen this play before. The hero becomes myth, and the factory that worships him forgets how to breathe without his rhythm. Marquez, ever the paradox, embodies both salvation and suspense. His contract's ticking clock has become the metronome of Ducati's anxiety. In quiet moments, he wonders if freedom will cost more than loyalty. He knows the 850 cubic centimeters aero will rewrite the laws of racing, and perhaps he too must rewrite himself. The engineers chase stability through numbers, yet the true instability lies in emotion, in the fragile faith that he will stay. Their simulations predict a future without him, a 0.7-second deficit per lap when the bike loses its reference data from his telemetry. Numbers like that can break hearts faster than engines. In the canteen, whispers fill the air like static. KTM is called, Yamaha too, and Aprilia waits with open arms. Marquez doesn't answer, or at least not yet. He stares at his reflection in the visor and thinks, how long can one man carry a dynasty before it crushes him? The truth is simple and brutal. Ducati's fear is not losing races but losing meaning. Because when a legend leaves, what remains is only machinery. And in MotoGP, machinery without a soul is just metal mourning its master.